For a lot of my life, I've dealt with I guess I would call it anger issues. Like I've always had kind of a bad temper. That always probably gives me too much credit. Mostly I throw temper tantrums from the time I was a kid, but really through adulthood. When things didn't go my way, I didn't get what I wanted, or expectations weren't met, I would usually throw some form of a temper tantrum, get angry, yell, break stuff sometimes. And for a while, that was just what I thought. Well, that's my thing, right? Everybody's got a thing, no big deal. But probably deep down, I always sensed it was not great and not the right way to be. And throughout much of that, particularly in my adult life, I was given advice at various different times, or guidance or criticism, from family members, whoever it might be, or I might have just heard it, in a book or a podcast or something about how to deal with that, and things that you should do, and approaches to kind of try and fix it. And it makes me think, right, as I try and think about, what makes it so hard to improve and change and think better and be better. I kind of try and think back to those times. And, as an example, when I would get really angry about something didn't go the way I wanted, you'd hear advice like, well, you have to pause in that moment and really think about it and understand, what are you really angry about? Or is there something else going on? And think about the way you might react if you're going to yell. Are you going to feel good afterwards, right? Like all this information, which is legitimate, right? Which is good information. And even at the time, 5, 10 years ago, I would hear things like that and think like, I get it. I hear what you're saying, but it didn't matter. It didn't really change anything. And again, I'm sure there was some denial there. I'm sure there's a lot of nuance to this, but at a high level, it was as if I had a math question in front of me, right? A math test, or an equation that I had to solve, and somebody just gave me the answer, and they were like, it's 67, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I trust that person, and they kind of walked me through aspects of how they got to 67, and it all seemed to make sense, but I couldn't actually do it myself, right? If they gave me a different equation and said, okay, now you do it, I was like, nope, right? I could try. Maybe I'd get close. I'd get certain parts right. I could try and figure it out, kind of work my way through it. But I'm not going to be able to do that. I don't know how to do the math you just did. I just don't. I appreciate the answer you gave me. I understand it. I trust that it's right. But when it comes time for me to do the work, I'm kind of lost. I have nothing to do. And that's kind of the parallel I would use to that sensation. Even if I wanted to get better, even if I recognized there was a problem, even if I sought out advice from people of what should I be doing. And there's lots of advice out there on that topic, and many of them that are much like that, where it's like, oh, okay. And today I could look at it, because now I have a deeper understanding of the math, and say, oh yeah, I see that advice I heard 10 years ago, still good advice. Now I see how they did the math behind it and how it actually worked. Now when I run into a situation today, tomorrow, the next day, and I need to use that, I can do that math and I can get to the answer. But it kind of speaks to the problem for me that I ran into, at least, and I think others do, when it comes to seeking out, self-improvement, or things to try and better ourselves in some ways. I said it before, there's lots of answers out there, lots of really good answers. There's some bad answers, but there's lots of really good answers. There's lots of even cliches, I find, right? All different things, just advice, general guidance, words of wisdom, cliches, self-improvement tips, all that stuff. A lot of it is really good and really useful, but you have to be able to receive it and digest it and actually act upon it, right? Think back to the math example. You have to be able to actually know how to do that math yourself. For somebody to just give you the answer to a question, sure, it helps on that question, great. Like that question, now you got it. But for you to actually go and do it on another question, on a future test, or in some other situation, I mean, you have no shot. There's no way. So it's got to be deeper. It's got to be more nuanced. We have to actually learn and understand what makes us be able to do that. What's stopping us? I hear the logic of what you're saying with this advice. I hear I should pause. I hear I should think about the underlying emotions. But why aren't I? What's making it so hard for me? Get into the mud. Understand the different dynamics. What kind of are my blind spots around how I think? What are my identity issues? You have to look at all of that, because that's all that math that you need to understand. So when that problem comes up again, you can get to the answer on your own and actually figure it out to get to a better place.